History is full of legends we were taught to dismiss, ghost stories, impossible journeys, myths whispered through centuries. But what if some of those fairy tales were never tales at all? What if ancient rumors, dismissed by scholars, mocked by scientists, and ignored by textbooks, were actually warnings? Today, we're diving into 13 historical myths that turned out to be true. Stories so unbelievable, so impossible, that when evidence finally surfaced, historians had no choice but to rewrite the world's past. From lost cities to real monsters, from conspiracies to forgotten civilizations, prepare to question everything you thought you knew about history.
Myth 1. The lost city of Troy was real. For centuries, Troy was considered nothing more than a poetic invention, a fictional city created by Homer to tell the story of heroes, gods, and the legendary Trojan War. Historians taught that Achilles, Hector, and the 1,000 ships were all nothing more than powerful metaphors, stories meant to entertain, not document real life. But in the 19th century, an eccentric amateur archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann refused to believe the experts. Armed with the Iliad like a treasure map, he traveled to Turkey, convinced that Troy was buried somewhere beneath the hills. What he discovered shocked the world. Deep under layers of earth lay the ruins of a massive fortified city, exactly where Homer described it. Walls thick enough to withstand siege, gates strong enough to hold back armies, layers of destruction consistent with war, fire, and collapse. But the most surprising part? Schliemann didn't just find one city, he found 9 Troys built on top of each other across centuries, proof of a powerful civilization that rose, fell, and rose again. Suddenly, the myth of Troy wasn't a myth anymore. It was real, a physical, undeniable city where real people lived, fought, and died. We may never know if every detail of Homer's story happened exactly as written, but the world was forced to face one truth. Troy existed, and the line between legend and history is thinner than we ever imagined.
Myth 2. Vikings reached America long before Columbus. For generations, the world was taught one simple historical fact. Christopher Columbus, quote-unquote, discovered America in 1492. It was written in textbooks, repeated in classrooms, and treated as absolute truth. But the old legends of the North told a very different story. Icelandic sagas, ancient Viking texts, spoke of a mysterious western land called Vinland, a fertile place with wild grapes, forests, and strange new peoples. A place where great explorer Leif Erikson supposedly landed around the year 1000, nearly 500 years before Columbus. Historians dismissed the sagas as folklore, nice stories, but nothing more, until 1960. Archaeologists Helge and Anstein Ingstad discovered a remote site in Newfoundland, Canada, a set of grass-covered mounds that looked suspiciously unnatural. When they dug deeper, the world changed forever. They uncovered Viking-style longhouses, iron nails and tools, a forge, Norse-style fireplaces, and artifacts identical to items found in Greenlandic Viking settlements. Radiocarbon dating confirmed it. The Vikings reached North America around the year 1000. Suddenly, the myth of Vinland was no longer myth. It was a historical fact. The Norse were the first known Europeans to set foot on American soil, centuries before Columbus ever set sail. And maybe the most incredible part? New evidence suggests Viking exploration may have stretched even farther south, meaning the story is still not fully told. A legend once dismissed turned out to rewrite the entire timeline of world exploration.
Myth 3. The Amazons, the warrior women, were real. For centuries, the Amazons were treated as pure mythology, fierce warrior women invented by the Greeks to entertain audiences with tales of impossible female fighters. Historians insisted that women in the ancient world never fought in large numbers, never led armies, and certainly never lived in all-female warrior tribes. The Amazons, they said, were symbolic, a metaphor, a fantasy. But archaeology had other plans. Across the Eurasian steppes, the lands once roamed by the Scythians, archaeologists began uncovering graves that shattered every assumption. Inside burial mounds, they found skeletons of women buried with bows, quivers of arrows, spears, bronze armor, riding gear, and battle wounds identical to those found on male warriors. Not just one grave, not 10, hundreds. DNA analysis confirmed it. These were female warriors, trained horseback riders, archers, and fighters. Even more astonishing, many had thigh bones shaped by a lifetime of horseback riding, and shoulder bones strengthened from years of archery practice. These were not decorative burials. These women truly fought. Greek writers described Amazons in detail, their clothing, their weapons, their tactics. And now it became clear. They weren't inventing a myth. They were describing real nomadic warrior women living beyond Greece's borders. The legend of the Amazons wasn't fantasy. It was a distorted echo of a real culture where women could be as deadly, skilled, and fearless as any man. A myth dismissed for centuries, proven true by the bones of the women who lived it.
Myth 4. The giant squid. The sea monster was real. For thousands of years, sailors told stories of enormous tentacled monsters rising from the black depths of the ocean, creatures strong enough to drag entire ships beneath the waves. The Greeks called them Scylla. The Vikings feared the Kraken. Medieval sailors swore they saw eyes the size of shields staring at them in the mist. Scientists laughed it off. These were sailor hallucinations, exaggerated fish tales, nothing more. But the ocean hides secrets longer than any myth. In the 19th century, strange discoveries began washing ashore. Massive tentacles longer than men, suction cups the size of plates, beaks capable of slicing bone, carcasses that hinted at unbelievable size. Still, no one had ever seen the creature alive. Many dismissed the remains as whales or decayed sea life distorted by water. Then, in 2004, everything changed. A Japanese research team captured the first ever photos of a live giant squid, a real creature up to 13 meters long, with eyes the size of dinner plates and tentacles powerful enough to crush prey in the darkness. In 2006, they filmed one. In 2012, they recorded another in full HD. The mythical monster was real all along, not a fantasy, not a hallucination, but a true deep-sea predator. The Kraken existed. It just lived far deeper than anyone imagined. A legend once mocked by scientists turned out to be a real, colossal animal hiding in the planet's last unexplored frontier.
Myth 5. The city of Pompeii was frozen in time.
For centuries, people heard whispers about an ancient Roman city swallowed in a single night, a place where time stopped, where citizens were turned to ash and entire streets were buried beneath a mountain of fire. Stories claimed the city vanished instantly, sealed away like a tomb of stone. Most historians doubted the dramatic details. Volcanoes were deadly, yes, but could they truly preserve the whole city exactly as it was? The myth sounded more like tragic poetry than science. But in 1748, workers digging near Naples uncovered something impossible. Under layers of hardened volcanic rock lay Pompeii, perfectly preserved. Not ruined, not eroded, preserved. Archaeologists found loaves of bread still in ovens, tables set for dinner, frescoes vibrant with color, shops stocked with goods, graffiti on walls, jokes and insults frozen in time. The bodies of people and animals captured in their final moments. Volcanic ash had created an airtight seal, stopping decay and locking the city in a moment of terror and stillness. Even the expressions on people's faces were preserved. Pompeii wasn't a poetic legend, it was real. A time capsule so complete that archaeologists could reconstruct life in the Roman Empire hour by hour. The myth turned out to be a perfect description of reality. A city killed in seconds and kept alive for thousands of years. A tragedy so sudden and absolute that history itself held its breath.
Myth 6. The Seven Wonders really existed. For centuries, many believed the seven wonders of the ancient world were exaggerated legends, poetic descriptions written by travelers who embellished everything they saw. The Hanging Gardens, too perfect to be real. The Colossus of Rhodes, too huge to stand. The Lighthouse of Alexandria, too advanced for its time. Historians assumed ancient writers romanticized the world, turning ordinary buildings into miracles. But archaeology kept proving them wrong. Stone by stone, ruin by ruin, evidence revealed that several of these wonders were not myths at all, but very real engineering marvels far ahead of their time. Excavations uncovered the massive foundation stones of the Temple of Artemis, still carved with intricate reliefs. The remains of the mausoleum at Halicarnassus, confirming its towering multi-tiered structure. Underwater ruins from the Lighthouse of Alexandria, showing blocks as large as cars. Ancient writings and city plans proving the statue of Zeus once dominated its temple. Bronze fragments, engineering notes, and city records describing the Colossus of Rhodes, matching ancient accounts almost perfectly. Even the Hanging Gardens, the most doubted of all, gained new credibility when archaeologists discovered sophisticated irrigation systems in ancient Babylon that could have supported such a structure. These were not fantasies. They were human ambition at its peak. Monuments so incredible that later historians assumed they must have been invented. But they existed. They stood. And they proved that ancient civilizations were far more advanced, creative, and brilliant than the myths ever suggested.
Myth 7. The samurai-ninja conflict was real. For centuries, the image of the ninja lived somewhere between folklore and fantasy. Shadow warriors leaping across rooftops, vanishing into smoke, fighting samurai in the dead of night. Historians often described them as exaggerations, inventions of theater, or symbols of rebellion rather than actual covert operatives. The idea that highly trained spies, assassins, and saboteurs operated in medieval Japan sounded too dramatic, too cinematic. But, as records were re-examined, the myth refused to die. In the last century, historians uncovered official documents, war logs, and clan records proving that ninja, originally known as shinobi, really existed and played a crucial role in Japanese history. Evidence revealed Iga and Koga clans trained generations of covert warriors. Detailed manuals on infiltration, camouflage, explosives, and intelligence gathering. Contracts between warlords hiring shinobi for espionage missions. Field reports describing sabotage, night raids, and psychological warfare. Weapon designs including smoke bombs, concealed blades, climbing tools, and early forms of grenades. Even samurai texts, once thought biased or symbolic, described attempts to capture or kill shinobi operatives. What shocked historians most was how sophisticated these networks were. The ninja weren't mystical superhumans, but highly skilled specialists in strategy, disguise, and guerrilla tactics. Over time, storytelling exaggerated their powers, turning real agents into supernatural shadows. But the core myth was true. Ninja existed. Their battles with samurai were real, and their influence helped shape centuries of Japanese warfare, intelligence, and politics. A legend born in darkness, confirmed by history itself.
Myth 8. The Minotaur's Labyrinth was based on a real place. For thousands of years, the story of the Minotaur, a monstrous creature trapped in a twisting underground labyrinth, was treated as pure Greek mythology, a symbolic tale, a moral lesson, a fantasy meant to entertain ancient audiences. No one believed there was ever a real labyrinth. No king, no maze, no monstrous prisoner. But then, archaeologists began excavating Knossos on the island of Crete, and everything changed. Below the ruins of the palace, they uncovered a sprawling, multi-level complex so large, so confusing, and so filled with twisting corridors that early researchers literally got lost inside it. The Palace of Knossos contained over 1,300 rooms, endless passageways looping back on themselves, staircases that led nowhere, hidden chambers, ceremonial halls carved deep into the earth, storage rooms arranged like a maze. To visitors of the ancient world, this unbelievably complex structure must have felt exactly like a labyrinth. Even more telling, Crete was ruled by the powerful Minoan civilization, whose name later inspired the myth of King Minos. Archaeologists also found frescoes showing bull rituals, acrobats leaping over bulls, bull-headed masks used in ceremonies. A bullman trapped in a labyrinth suddenly didn't seem so far-fetched. The myth wasn't literal, but it was rooted in real places, real rituals, and real fears of an ancient civilization. The Minotaur may not have been a monster, but its labyrinth absolutely existed. A legend born from stone, rediscovered beneath the sands of Crete.
Myth 9. The vampire burials were real. For centuries, stories of vampires haunted the villages of Eastern Europe. Tales of corpses rising from their graves, draining life from the living, spreading sickness through entire towns. People whispered about the undead, about bodies that refused to decay, about strange deaths that came in the night. Historians dismissed these stories as superstition, fear mixed with imagination, nothing more. But when archaeologists began excavating medieval cemeteries in Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, and the Czech lands, they found something disturbing. Real graves prepared exactly the way villagers described in vampire legends. The remains showed bodies buried with iron stakes through the chest, large stones placed in the mouth to stop feeding, decapitated skeletons with heads placed between their legs, limbs pinned with metal rods, sickles laid across the neck to cut off the head if the corpse rose, bricks placed on the throat to prevent breathing, and graves filled with heavy rocks to trap the body inside. These weren't accidents. They were systematic anti-vampire rituals practiced for hundreds of years. Modern science finally explained the phenomenon. Bodies that decomposed slowly due to cold weather or released gases or shifted position in their graves created terrifying illusions of movement. People panicked and performed rituals to stop the dead from returning. The myth of vampires wasn't supernatural, but it was absolutely real in the minds of people who feared death, disease, and the unknown. A legend born from misunderstanding, yet preserved in the bones of those buried with terror. Myth 10. The Amazon jungle hid a lost civilization. For decades, European explorers believed the Amazon was nothing more than a green desert, a place where cities, temples, or large settlements could never exist. And whenever early travelers reported massive communities deep in the rainforest, scholars responded, "It's a myth. The Amazon could never support an advanced civilization." But the myths didn't disappear. Local indigenous legends spoke of ancient cities, road networks, plazas, and even entire states swallowed by vegetation. And only in the 21st century did the truth finally break through. When archaeologists began using LiDAR, laser scanning technology capable of penetrating dense jungle canopy, they saw something impossible to deny. Huge geometric structures, perfectly straight roads, mounds, canals, platforms, and fortified settlements, all hidden beneath the leaves for centuries. They discovered giant circular and square city layouts, roads up to 30 meters wide stretching for hundreds of kilometers, sophisticated irrigation systems, ruins of pyramidal platforms, a network of settlements connected into a single infrastructure. This civilization didn't just exist, it thrived. Scientists realized the Amazon wasn't a desert at all, but a home to hundreds of thousands of people with centralized organization, engineering, and culture. The forest swallowed their cities, but it never erased the evidence. The myth of the lost Amazon civilization turned out to be true. They did exist. Their world was enormous, complex, and completely hidden until modern technology revealed the secrets buried beneath ancient trees.
Myth 11. The cannibal tribes actually existed. For decades, stories brought back by explorers sounded too shocking to believe. Tribes deep in Papua New Guinea practicing ritual cannibalism. Many historians dismissed these tales as sensationalism, exaggerated stories told by European travelers eager to shock their audiences. Anthropologists insisted such extreme practices were either misunderstood or fabricated. But the truth began to emerge in the mid-20th century.
Doctors and researchers exploring the remote Foray tribe in Papua New Guinea discovered something terrifying: a mysterious, fatal brain disease sweeping through the population, kuru, meaning shivering. Victims experienced tremors, uncontrollable laughter, then paralysis, and finally, death. Scientists were baffled. It behaved like no disease ever recorded. Until they discovered the cause. The illness was transmitted through ritualistic consumption of the dead, a funerary practice meant to honor loved ones by absorbing their spirit. Women and children, the primary participants in these rituals, were the most affected. Autopsies revealed the horrifying truth. Kuru was a prion disease, similar to mad cow, transmitted through brain tissue. This wasn't a European exaggeration. Cannibalistic funeral rites were real, culturally significant, and deadly. When the tribe eventually abandoned the practice under medical guidance, the disease almost disappeared within a generation. The myth of cannibal tribes wasn't a fantasy, racism, or explorer fiction. It was a misunderstood but very real cultural ritual with devastating consequences. A story too shocking to believe, proven true by science, anthropology, and the bones of its victims.
Myth 12. The Great Flood legends were based on real events. Nearly every ancient civilization, from Mesopotamia to China to the indigenous peoples of the Americas, has a myth about a great flood that wiped out entire societies. The stories are eerily similar: a rising wall of water, cities disappearing overnight, survivors escaping on boats, and a world reborn after the disaster. For centuries, scholars dismissed these tales as symbolic metaphors, moral stories, creation myths, nothing more. But geology began telling a different story. In the 20th and 21st centuries, scientists found overwhelming evidence that multiple catastrophic megafloods actually happened, and they were far more destructive than anyone imagined. Research revealed, around 5600 BCE, the Mediterranean Sea violently surged into the Black Sea basin, flooding more than 60,000 square miles in a matter of months, a disaster powerful enough to wipe out entire cultures. Massive glacial floods in North America released more water than all the world's rivers combined. In ancient Mesopotamia, deep sediment layers show a sudden, devastating flood around 2900 BCE, exactly in the time frame of Sumerian and Babylonian myths. Oral traditions from indigenous tribes describe events consistent with post-Ice Age sea level rises. These weren't symbolic stories, they were memories of real cataclysms passed down through generations. The names Noah, Utnapishtim, and Manu may be mythological, but the disasters they describe? Those happened. The Great Flood wasn't just legend, it was history, rewritten by the survivors who lived to tell the tale.
Myth 13. The death birds were real. Animals can sense natural disasters. For centuries, people around the world claimed that animals could sense death before it arrived, that birds vanished before earthquakes, dogs howled before storms, and livestock panicked hours before a disaster struck. Scientists called these beliefs superstition, folklore, coincidence. Ancient Romans wrote about birds fleeing the city before Mount Vesuvius erupted. Chinese villagers told legends of snakes escaping their burrows before earthquakes. Indigenous tribes warned that wildlife silence was a sign of incoming catastrophe. Historians dismissed it all. That is,
until modern research proved the myth true. Over the last few decades, scientists studying seismic activity uncovered something remarkable. Animals react to disasters long before humans even notice the danger. Research showed snakes emerging from underground hours before earthquakes, birds fleeing entire regions days before volcanic eruptions, dogs whining and pacing before tsunamis, cows and goats clustering tightly before severe storms, elephants running inland long before the 2004 tsunami hit, saving themselves while humans stood unaware. In Italy, motion sensors tracked farm animals acting erratically 18 to 20 hours before a major quake. In Japan, cat behavior has been successfully used to model short-term prediction patterns. Animals weren't guided by myth or superstition. They were responding to real, measurable signals from the Earth. What humans called omens were actually instincts evolved through millions of years of survival. A legend believed for ages, finally confirmed by modern science.